Views expressed are solely those of the speaker and not necessarily those of Paltalk.com, AVM Software, or its advertisers.
News Talk Online. News Talk is online. News Talk Online is a production of Paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the internet, with more than 4 million unique users on demand on iTunes and on YouTube and on my blog, GaryBaumgarten.com, where you're encouraged to post your comments, whether you agree with yours truly or not. And thanks to our good friends at CRN Digital Talk Radio, we're syndicated to an additional 12 million households. I am your host, Gary Baumgarten. I welcome you to the show. Well, today we have some pretty sad news, what might be described by some as a terrorist attack of sorts, given the motivation behind what happened and where it occurred. Occurred at the Holocaust Museum, the official U.S. Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. By all reports, what happened, an elderly guy in his 80s walked into the museum armed with a rifle and opened fire, shooting a security guard who we are now told has succumbed to those injuries. The gunman was felled by return fire shot by other security guards there. The museum is known because of what it is for its security. You have to go through metal detectors to get inside. Perhaps it was in that area before the metal detectors where the shooting occurred. Normally there's a long line to get into the place. It's very well attended. It was open at the time of the shooting this early afternoon today. But a rifle is a little difficult to conceal. How he managed to walk in with a rifle, we don't know. We hear that he may have been a white supremacist and that he had the initial information, long had anti-Semitic feelings towards Jews. And perhaps the fact that the guard was African American might have played into the reason why he was shot by the gunman. All this is very initial information and fairly speculative. We are pleased to have as our guest today Gary Moskowitz, who is a frequent contributor to News Talk Online on Paltalk.com. Gary Moskowitz is a former NYPD officer. He is now a security consultant, and he is pretty narrowly focused in his outreach as a security consultant, mainly trying to help religious institutions protect themselves against just this kind of an attack. There's just too many loony kazoonies out there, too much hatred, and too much chance that a religious institution might be targeted, apparently by a lone guy. There seems to be no initial indication that this gunman was working in conjunction with anybody else. Gary Moskowitz, welcome to News Talk Online on Paltalk.com.
Thank you. It's good to get back here, Gary.
Well, it's good to have you. Obviously, no one could have predicted an attack on this particular institution, the U.S. Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. in particular. But we do know that a plot was just thwarted here in New York City that would have targeted Jewish synagogues and an Air National Guard base in upstate New York. So I would imagine from your perspective, it's not so surprising, I guess, that this actually occurred.
Oh, it's not surprising at all. First of all, I think it should have been something that should have been expected. Going against the Holocaust Museum in Washington, which is like a national treasure, basically, is bound to get whoever does the shooting national or international attention here. These are high-profile areas here where a lot of these gunmen are looking to get. So I think it shouldn't be surprised at all. I think that people are sleeping at the switch. I think people must realize this because it's happening sporadically in different areas here. It can be happening more and more, and there's not enough training. one of the things I've been mentioning, I've been arguing for years, is not just having security guards, but by the way, I'm thankful that the guards did something, and one guard paid with his life with this. They were good what they did, even on initial reports. I don't have all the reports in yet. No one does, but we'll have it as the days unfold. But the fact is it's not a matter of just having guards protect you. We need to train lay people on how to protect themselves in addition to working with local guards. Just like we teach the police, where the police train individual communities how to work with safety, with school safety, auxiliary police, etc. We need to train individual people working at especially Jewish institutions or other religious institutions or other people who have we call a clear and present danger from extremist groups, whether they're extremist Muslims or extremist white supremacists, etc.
Gary, in this case, I mean, I know that this is something that you might discuss with a church, a synagogue, or a mosque about how to better protect themselves. Generally, there are not armed security guards at a religious institution, and it might take, if one came under attack, some time before help could come from the local police. And in the case of a religious institution, you might want to train members of the congregation, just as you might have people to volunteer as ushers at a church. Some people might want to volunteer to be security at a church. I understand that, but the Holocaust Museum, certainly you wouldn't expect that guests would be armed. In fact, they couldn't be armed because of the metal detectors.
Well, I'm not talking about guests. I'm talking about people who work there. When I talk about lay people, I'm talking about anybody who comes to an institution that could be targeted, that could be considered a high profile or a clear and present danger. In this case here, I wouldn't call the Holocaust Museum a clear and present danger before, but I would certainly call them a high profile target. And I think the security has to be integrated with lay people who work there as well. It's the same thing I've been talking about, whether it's religious institution or schools. Schools also, there should be individual people who are trained with weapons in case something happens as well. You just can't rely on one or two, a handful of security guards to protect someone who's clearly aimed on bent on destruction and willing to die themselves. I mean, this man who came in here was prepared to get himself shot. He knew that. He must have known that when he came in there. He must have known people would shoot back at him, but he didn't care as long as he caught a few people himself. We need to be able to have, if he would have got in there, I'm glad he didn't go into the inner sanctum of the Holocaust Museum, but it could have been more tragic than it was. And the fact of the matter is that people have to be trained. Law enforcement, whether private or public, have to work with the people they're protecting, hand in hand. When I do bodyguard work, executive protection here, I don't just guard people and tell them, just, don't worry about it, I'm here. I teach them some basics here to protect themselves, just in case I'm tangled up with 2 or 3 people, or God forbid I have to defend them, whether it's weapons or without weapons here. They have to take some precautions also to help me protect them, whether it's individually or if I'm with a group of people. So it's important there's some symbiotic relationship between the lay people and also the professional private security people or police.
You've talked a lot in the past about profiling people to protect institutions, profiling people at the entrances to